This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome to the National Lighting Contractors Association's presentation on Title 24, California Energy Code and Lighting Controls. This is not a live presentation. This is being recorded. During our live presentation, we had some technical difficulties, so I went ahead and I'm re-recording. I'm actually recording this presentation for you. Thank you. So I don't need to go through the GoToMeeting instructions because we don't have anyone in line. And we'll move forward here. So again, Michael Scalzo, National Lighting Contractors Association of America. I'm the executive director. My background, I was a 25-year field electrician. 12 of my years as an electrician, I spent in IBW. I've done electrical contracting. I do take an active role in the stakeholder process for Title 24 to help improve the energy codes. I've been an acceptance test technician and an acceptance test employer and an instructor for both CalCTP and NLCAA. And we'll talk about those acronyms in a couple slides. It'll help you to understand. But I've been an acceptance test technician for both California Advanced Lighting Controls Training Program and NLCAA. As an acceptance test technician, I've been on over 350 projects doing tens of thousands of tests. And even more projects that I've been to as an employer and also as a field auditor of acceptance test technicians. As an energy consultant for NLCAA, I traveled to various jurisdictions to provide non-residential lighting and electrical code, energy code training to building examiners, building inspectors, and plans examiners. And additionally, in addition to being the executive director for NLCAA, I'm also an executive director for our other school, California Electrical Training, which is a state certified DIR approved electrical trainee program. So I have a lot of background in the electrical field, but I also do have quite a bit in Title 24. So what is Title 24? Well, basically Title 24 is the California Code of Regulations, also known as the California Building Codes. There's 11 different parts to this Title 24. Within these 11 parts, Part 6 covers California Energy Code. Some of the other codes are Building Code, Electrical Code, Mechanical Code. So there's various different parts. But today we're going to talk about Part 6, which concentrates on, and we'll concentrate on lighting, but within that Part 6, we also have electrical and mechanical. Now, Energy Code is a little bit different than electrical code. Electrical code tells you how that energy has to travel, what safety measures need to be in place, like circuit breakers and overcurrent devices, conduit and wire, how it's going to get to you, and the limitations. Energy code speaks to how that energy is actually used. How much wattage can you use to illuminate a particular room, what that light bulb is allowed to burn, how we calculate our energy calculations. And this is all regulated by the California Energy Commission. So the California Energy Commission oversees Title 24. So today we're going to be talking about lighting, which is Part 6. Now, a lot of people say, is Title 24 worth it? You give us all sorts of regulations, you give us all sorts of codes, you're making us spend more money. Well, to be honest, since 1976, when the Energy Code was implemented, California's seen a 29% energy savings versus other national and international standards like IECC or even ASHRAE 90.0. The Energy Code was developed to save the end user money. So ultimately, all these codes are based on saving that end user money. In doing so, they update this code every 3 years to ensure that they have their codes up to date with modern technology. I mean, we have advancement in all sorts of devices and controls, which the Energy Code oversees, and ultimately saving California billions of dollars over this period of time. Now, how do they save money? Well, in lighting controls, they use devices. They use devices to save energy, to consume energy. We have area controls or manual area controls like on-off switches. We have multi-level controls like dimmers, shut-off controls like occupancy sensors and time clocks. We also have automatic daylighting controls, photo cells that will determine how much light is coming inside the space and maybe lower the lighting to conserve energy and use natural daylight. And then we have controls like demand response controls that are triggered by outside entities like a public utility to save energy to prevent a brownout. Now, what's important about Title 24 is how these controls are utilized and what restrictions the end user has on capability of programming. So Title 24 speaks to the design of a project. So how that project's designed, what controls have to go into this project, what controls are allowed to be in that project. It speaks to the installation, where those controls get installed, how they get installed, and then lastly, how that startup commissioning is done. How are those controls programmed? Are there limitations? And even Title 24 has another, within Title 24 is another section that we look at, which speaks to the device requirements, that what those devices are allowed or not allowed to do, and what minimum level requirements those devices have to be able to be capable of. Like an example of that would be a dimmer. A dimmer must be capable of at least a 65% reduction of energy. So there's a lot of different requirements that go in not only to the codes, the devices, but overall the design of a project. And the last aspect, which we'll be talking about today a lot of, is about the acceptance testing process. What is acceptance testing, or that ATT like you saw on the slide earlier? So let's talk about what acceptance testing is. So acceptance testing is basically a process where a certified acceptance test technician that goes out and does a functional hands-on testing of these lighting controls. For lighting, they're testing the lighting controls. They're not looking at the luminaires. Now, these acceptance test technicians, or we'll call them ATTs, have to be certified, and they get certified by what's called an acceptance test technician certification provider. NLCAA is one of those, or an ATTCP. So NLCAA is a certified entity, and we're certified through the California Energy Commission. And then the ATTs, the people that are going out there and doing that functional hands-on testing of the lighting controls, are certified through NLCAA. Now, acceptance testing exists not just for lighting. So you'll hear it spoken about maybe mechanical testing. Mechanical equipment now has a requirement for acceptance test technician. It just currently doesn't have to be done by a certified acceptance test technician at this time. In the very near future, all mechanical acceptance test technicians will have to be certified through what's called an ATTCP. Also, just so you know, elevator, conveyors, and walkways also have the requirement for acceptance testing, but that is done by the installing contractor. Now, when we're going back to lighting ATTs, like the ones that NLCAA certifies, NLCAA provides proprietary software. So these acceptance test technicians, like you can see the technician in the picture there, he's working on his laptop or his tablet using proprietary software provided to him by the ATTCP, and you can see also the light meter. So they're going to use various different tools in addition to that testing software. They're going to functionally test, and what you don't see is the dimmer that that tester's controlling there. Now, there is an additional certification that is required for a testing in the testing process, and that's called the Acceptance Test Employer, the ATE. So the person that operates the business must also be certified by an ATTCP. This speaks to having that business be certified, meaning they are going to have various different certifications, like they must carry workman's comp insurance, they must have business insurance, maybe a C10 or an engineering degree, or various other certifications that qualify that business to be an ATE. So there's two certifications, an ATT and then an ATE. And one person can actually carry both certifications, like myself. Previously, at my previous company, I was the acceptance test technician. I also was the acceptance test employer. So, and again, it's important to understand there's a difference between the two. The acceptance test technician is that person in the field that is out there doing hands-on functional testing using that proprietary software. And then there's the acceptance test employer, the ATE. They operate the business of acceptance testing. Now, the ATE is the one that actually can access the testing software. They actually download that testing software and they provide it to their test technician. So the technician cannot purchase or access that software without permission for the employer. So that ensures that we have two different certifications and both used on every project. So why is acceptance testing important? Well, it provides a hands-on verification through functional testing. This is ensuring that all of the controls have been installed and they're working properly, and the end user won't have any reason to disconnect those controls, bypass those controls, because they've been functionally tested. And Title 24 also ensures that we have compliant devices on the project, but also that the manufacturer's instructions have also been followed. It's very important that not only do we follow the codes, but also the manufacturer's instructions. And in doing this, we ensure that the acceptance testing will ensure that the controls are functioning correctly, so the end user sees the savings in investment, because they're spending a lot of money on these controls. It's almost like an investment, so they want to see that ROI, that return on investment. I'll spend this money on the controls, but somewhere down the line, I need to see a payback on that. And last important thing I wanted to talk about is acceptance testing is very similar to building commissioning, where that engineer or that commissioning agent goes out to the building and they test all the systems, not just the lighting, but they'll be testing the mechanical and the plumbing and the structural, and they'll look at various different areas. But that verification process is for the end user, for the owner of that building, to ensure that their requirements were met during the design installation phase. Acceptance testing is to ensure that Title 24 requirements were met, that we met the CEC requirements to ensure that all those devices were installed and they were properly programmed and they're all operating correctly. The idea here is you don't want that end user bypassing the controls because they don't work correctly. So that's where kind of the acceptance testing process came about, is that they're having these end users or these owners spend all these money on these controls. They want to ensure that they're all working properly when they go out to their building. Now, when is acceptance testing done? So acceptance testing is done on all non-residential new construction projects and all new additions. When we look at alterations, there's certain triggers. Not all alterations, like a retrofit possibly, may require acceptance testing. There's some exceptions in there. So I would just say most alterations require acceptance testing, but there are some exceptions. Acceptance testing is done at the end of the project when all of the lighting and the lighting controls are installed. So it's very important that we have everything installed, up and running, and they've been commissioned too, or startup has been performed on that lighting control system. And acceptance testing has to be done before the certificate of occupancy is provided to the owner from the building department. So the building department is going to ask that contractor, hey, where are your testing forms? We want to see your acceptance testing forms, or also known as the NLCAA forms, before we will issue that certificate of occupancy. So there's a lot of parts to this acceptance testing, which we'll talk about as we're going through this presentation a little bit more. But the one entity we didn't really talk about is that ATTCP, the Acceptance Test Technician Certified Provider. So they have the responsibility to train and certify the acceptance test technicians and the acceptance test employers. Additionally, they have a requirement for oversight. So ATTCPs must perform oversight on those on their ATTs and ATEs. And I apologize, there's a lot of acronyms. And for lighting controls, there are only two ATTCPs, NLCAA and CalCTP. Now, for mechanical systems, I think there's 5 different ATTCPs, but again, at this time, that's not required. Certified acceptance test technicians aren't required on projects at this time. It's coming in the very near future. And this overall Title 24 acceptance testing requirement is just to ensure that all the controls are installed and they meet the California requirements of Title 24. Now, This ATTCP program has not been around very long. It was started back in July 1st of 2014 is when the California Energy Commission required that lighting controls be tested by a certified ATT or an ATE. And additionally, just one last other certification for NLCAA, we are DIR approved, so Department of Industrial Relations. We are approved to offer CEUs for all of our training. So any electrician, California State general electrician that needs continuous education, our courses count as CEUs towards that 32 hours of continuous education. Now, why use NLCAA? Well, first of all, NLCAA is up to date on the most current energy codes and training. We are constantly evolving. We are constantly working with the Energy Commission, working out interpretations and understanding of code. This is not just a 3-year code cycle like the codes are. This is a monthly basis we speak to the California Energy Commission. And our content covers not just lighting controls, but it covers a lot of other different areas that are critical areas of construction when we look at design and when we look at, let's say, startup and other different areas. When we look at electrical, when we look at signs, there's a lot more curriculum that's out there that we offer that covers other different aspects of construction. And all of our education and training and curriculum is all relevant to the CTE and college transfer programs. We are capable of outreach through online, streaming, in-person training, or portable training equipment. Currently, we work with multiple other organizations providing curriculum, or we provide a full-on in-house training program using lighting control, portable lighting control boards that are just state-of-the-art lighting control boards. Our training provides an opportunity for advancement in many different industries. So that's why we actually go to other electrical schools and provide this training, because our training is state-of-the-art and they want that as part of their program to advance their students. And in doing so, they will increase their earnings. I mean, let's be honest. If you have the most up-to-date training, you go out to the field, you become more viable for your company, and opportunities for increasing your income or promotions, or even going into business for yourself. So our expounding outreach, which is a natural tie-in to the current and future workforce represented in the California Community College system, would be a great partnership. Now, let's look at how that looks at. So when we're looking at the process of what this curriculum covers, it covers multiple disciplines. We have multiple disciplines covering architectural engineering, lighting design. We have the installation installers, and then we have the acceptance test technicians. And on the other side, we have the process of the building development. So we have our actors, and then we have our process. So in our first part of our process, we have a design. Well, that design includes the architect, engineer, and lighting design. There's a lot of codes that work with the design. We have to ensure that that design is compliant. We have to prevent any kind of construction delays in that design. When we send our plans to plan check, we want to receive that permit. So there's a lot of important aspects of Title 24 that you need to be aware of on that design side. When we look at the construction and the installation, we're talking to the installers. These installers need to be aware of, hey, how do these controls go in? Where they go? How do we put them in? Because Title 24 has multiple code books, and one of those code books speaks to the installation of the lighting controls. And ultimately, it falls on the installer to provide a code compliant project. That responsibility or burden does not fall on the design team. The installers ultimately held accountable for providing a Title 24 compliant building. Now, when we look to the startup or the commissioning of the lighting controls, this is very important. We need to be aware of what those codes are for Title 24, because we may have a scenario where we have a group of offices, and the startup agent from XYZ Controls flies in. He comes in to do their startup controls. He programs all the controls and he gets out of there. Well, the acceptance test technician comes in there and walks into the office, and all of a sudden the lighting comes on automatically at 100%. Well, in that scenario, per code, there may be a requirement that that lighting only is allowed to come on at 50%. So now that installer needs to get that manufacturer back out. Well, that has a dollar amount. Maybe to get that technician is going to cost another $3,000. And then maybe it might take them 4 days because that technician might be on another project on the East Coast. Then we got to pay that acceptance test technician another $1,500 to come out. So there's a lot of different aspects, and each one of these phases can be associated with a dollar amount when we're looking at design, construction, install, startup, and then finally testing. And if you don't pass the testing the first time, what is it going to cost? What pitfalls are we going to run into? So that's where training and curriculum can really tie into all aspects of the process of Title 24, but it also works with the various different actors or the disciplines of Title 24. And in doing so, you can see how everything ties in together. Now, for compliance, there's a way that all of this process needs to be documented, which is another important aspect. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but I want you to understand that there's various different documents that need to provide it, and those get saved, and they will be made available to the general public in the very near future through the California Energy Commission. But the first set of forms that get completed are the NRCC forms, the non-residential certificate of compliance. This is the designer under perjury of law signing a document saying, I have designed a code compliant project. Well, when it comes down to the installer, they have their own set of forms. They have the non-residential certificate of installation. This is the designer under perjury of law stating, hey, you know what? I have installed a code. Did I say a certificate of installation? I hope I did. But that's them documenting, saying, hey, you know what? I have installed a code compliant project. And the last aspect of it is that a certified acceptance test technician coming in and going, hey, I've done the functional testing, and under perjury of law, I'm signing these documents. All these lighting controls function and operate and meet all the requirements of Title 24. And at that point, all the forms are completed. Now the certificate of occupancy can be issued. And all of these documents are going to get uploaded eventually to a repository. But currently, a lot of these documents reside with the ATTCPs. So these forms are very unique because, especially for lighting, because lighting, ATTCPs, NLCAA, and CalCTP are the two organizations that have generate their own actual forms. All the other forms you'll see out there have a California Energy Commission stamp. Our forms have have logos on them that state that these are actual ATTCP forms. These forms have been reviewed and approved by the California Energy Commission. So just kind of take a look at it. You can see these are forms that they are generated from that proprietary software after the functional testing is done. So now what I'd like you to do is sit back and relax while I show you a process. So previously at my previous company that I worked for prior to NLCAA, we started out I started acceptance testing when it was first implemented, and then it grew into a whole division. We basically blossomed. But in the beginning stages of acceptance testing, we found that there was a high failure rate of all the projects during the testing process. So I developed a process to help and assist these contractors, engineers, designers, end users, installers, a process to get them through the acceptance testing process, and I want to share it with you. And we teach this in pretty much every Title 24 class that we offer. So we're going to start off with the basis of design. That's basically coming together to come up with an idea for the building. The architect design team creates an architectural design. Once that design is created, they're going to send it over to an engineer, the engineering, and say, hey, I want you to design, I want you to engineer my building, and I want you to make it work to my parameters based on the basis of design. So the engineer will go ahead and she will create a good drawing and hopefully make sure it's code compliant. But if it's not, we want to put some checks in there to ensure that it becomes code compliant. One of those checks is if she's done her own design of the lighting controls, that it's gone through a Title 24 review. Send it to somebody who is well experienced in Title 24 plan review. Now, additionally, within that plan review, we'll talk a little bit about this later, but there are really two major code books that we work with. One is called the Building Energy Efficiency Standards, which is our meat potatoes code. And then we have something called the reference appendices. This is a book, this is an actual code book that covers the testing procedures. Engineers are very, very familiar with the standards, but a lot of engineers and designers do not look at the testing procedures. So just because a set of plans were design code compliant doesn't mean they're going to pass the testing procedures that are done by that ATT. So you want that Title 24 reviewer to be familiarized with the testing procedures. Now, the engineer may say, hey, you know what, this Title 24 with the lighting controls too much. I'm going to send it to a manufacturer to get a manufactured design. So the manufacturer will go in and do their own design. Sometimes they do it apples for apples, matching what the engineer did. Sometimes they work in some Title 24 compliance. Regardless, they are not the experts in Title 24, but they will send it back to the engineer and say, hey, here's our plan. Okay, great, we're all done. Well, at that point, that engineer should send that back to the Title 24, or not back, but send it to the for Title 24 review to ensure that we get our Title 24 review done. Now, if there's some hiccups or problems with the plans, let's send it back to that engineer for corrections. And once that corrections are done, another review by the Title 24, and then back to the engineer for final review before he submits it in for permitting. Sounds like a lot of steps, but actually with the modern age of electronic communication, this actually moves pretty quick. This process is the first step. That's the design stage of our project here. So we want to ensure that we're starting off our project with code compliant designs. So once the engineer has his code compliant design, actually I think the engineer was female. She has a code compliant drawings. She sends them back to the architect, and then the architect will submit them to plan check. Now, a big thing in plan check to know, when plans get submitted to plan check, majority of the time there are notes, comments, changes, or suggestions that need to be done to those plans to modify those plans. So the plans going into plan check come out differently when they are permitted. And another fact to be aware of, and I say fact because it is a fact, that a lot of engineering firms, to save on their budget, submit plans to plan check that are only 80% complete. They want to leave 20% of their budget available for any comments and notes that come back from plan check. So if they get comments and notes from plan check, they'll come back, they'll do those corrections, and they have their budget left for it. So why is that important to know? Well, it's not about the budget. What happens is sometimes those 80% plans get pushed through and pass. So permitted plans get permitted that are not code compliant, or they're only 80% compliant. So a lot of things can happen in plan check. But let's say we get through plan check and now the permitted plans have made them out. The first thing we want to do is send a set to the acceptance test technician. This is the person that's going to go out to the site and do the functional testing. So they need to ensure that, hey, I need to see the plans, make sure they're all code compliant. You know, you've gone through plan check, maybe something happened. So that's very important. So once that happens and the permit is set, goes out to the field. So the plans go to the general contractor. The contractor issues them to the electrical contractor, and guess what? The electrical installation starts. Now the electrical installer gets the plans and says, hey, you know what? I don't want to use XYZ controls. I want to use ABC controls. So that electrical contractor sends their plans off to a manufacturer for the manufactured design. So the manufacturer of ABC controls creates their own design. Well, guess what? Guess where those plans got to go next? Back to the ATT. We need to review those plans to ensure that they're still code compliant. And one extra step that we implemented at our company is that we've added an ATT site visit to the project. So the ATT would go out to the site during the rough construction phase, meet with that contractor, ensure that they understand the code requirements, make sure no changes happen, because during construction, a lot of things change. Windows move, ceilings get shifted, lighting gets shifted, things get deleted. So just to ensure that the project is remain Title 24 compliant, regardless of what the plans say, we have an ATT out there. And additionally, ATTs become experts in lighting controls. All various different manufacturers, they become experts in lighting controls, because when they get out there, they're like the guru of lighting controls in Title 24. So in addition to Title 24, that ATT will support that electrical contractor on the lighting controls installation. But let's say we get through it, we got everything, the ATT's done well, we've got everything installed. Now we're ready for our startup, basically the startup of our lighting controls. This could be performed by different people, the installing contractor, the manufacturer, or even, you know what, there's third party or even ATTs do a lot of startup out there because it goes hand in hand with what they're already doing for the acceptance testing. So once the commissioning is all done, guess what? Our installation is now complete and we're ready to go for acceptance testing. So we go through acceptance testing. Once we pass the acceptance testing, then the electrical building final can be issued, or the building final can be issued. So this process is quite intense. So we saw during the design phase, we started out with code compliant drawings. When we got into the installation, we had that ATT involved in the installation just to ensure that the installation was code compliant. And then when we went through this testing process, we got through the testing because our tester was involved during the whole process, and we got past it, and the electrical building file was issued. Now, let me share a couple little stories of what can happen when we don't follow this process. So a public utility project, it was a 3-story building, 10,000 square feet per floor that was being done. An acceptance test technician could not pass the project. It was failing the acceptance testing. They called me up. Being a subject matter expert, I get called a lot by ATTs to help assist them. So he said, hey, you know what, Michael, I can't pass this project. It won't pass the testing procedures. Can you come out and help us? The engineers are blaming me. I said, send me the plans and then I'll come out there tomorrow and we'll take a look at the project. Once I received the plans from him, within 5 minutes after reviewing those plans, I knew that this project will never pass the testing process because I understand the functional testing process, meaning what's involved in that testing. The next day I go out there, the team of engineers from the public utility, and then they had a few other friends behind them come out there to tell us how wrong we were and that our testing procedures were flawed. That's what they were basically stating, that the testing procedures were flawed and that it was our problem. I basically explained to them that, you know what, there is this book called the Reference Appendices. Testing procedures are code. You need to be able to pass the testing procedures in addition to the standards. I put them in connection with the California Energy Commission. The California Energy Commission agreed with them, and then they came back to us and said, what do we need to do? And it was simple enough. On these 3 floors, on these 10,000 square foot floors, they installed 2 daylight sensors. And they had 4 cardinal directions of windows in this building, so they really needed 4 daylight sensors for this whole building to work. So basically an additional $500 in controls on each floor. That they did not provide in the drawings, and that prevented the project from passing. 6 weeks later, I think it was about $65,000 in change orders. They installed $3,000 worth of controls, and they got through the functional testing. Again, this could have been prevented through a Title 24 review. So there's a reason to have that Title 24 review during the design stage to ensure that your plans are code compliant or after permitting. One other quick one I'm going to show speaks to the installation. I went out to a project to do the acceptance testing, and when I got out there during the plan check, they added a 3rd row of skylights. The project had 2 rows of skylights, and the design showed lighting controls for those skylights, photo sensors, but they added a 3rd row, but they never added any controls for that 3rd row. So when I got out there, the project failed. Had we gone out there, done a site walk and seen that there was a 3rd row of skylights added during the construction phase, we could have picked up on that and said, hey, add that $500 sensor in there, get it programmed, no big deal, we're gonna be perfect. But since they didn't do that, they ended up delaying their project. I think it was about 4 weeks. So that was a big cost. They rewired the entire ceiling of this national chain shopping center, 5,000 square feet. They had to completely rewire. That could have been caught during a construction walk. So some good reasoning to follow this process. Now, I'm going to ask you a rhetorical question. I don't expect anyone to answer because we're all muted here. But using this process on 200 projects that we did a survey on our company. So using this process on 200 projects, what percentage do you think actually passed the acceptance testing process by being involved in the design, the installation, and then the acceptance testing? We had 100% passing rate on all tests done when using this process. Now, on 200 projects that did not use this process, meaning I probably got a phone call, hey, come out and test my job tomorrow. We're all done. We're waiting for you. So I basically just go out there, never looked at the plans or anything, and gone out there and test. What percentage of those projects do you think passed without using this process? 30%. So we had a 70% failure rate when not using this process. So it's really important. You know, this process is really a valuable tool. I know a lot of acceptance testing companies that use this as their business model. I started this a long time ago. I shared it with a lot of people, and I know a lot of people have this in their business model. I'm not going to say it's my business model that they mimic or copy, but I'm an open book. I'm a advocate of Title 24, so I've shared this with a lot of people to try and help them get going. But it adding all this information and adding the Title 24 actually adds a good skill set into your toolbox. So I mean, this training, Title 24 training, and understanding the standards and understanding testing procedures is relative to a lot of trades. All right, this is the direction that our industry is going. This is a whole new niche, basically a whole new industry for us, and electricians have to become experts at not only lighting controls, but also Title 24. Controls have drastically changed to meet Title 24. So if you're still back on that mechanical time clock in the toggle switch, you know what? You're way behind. So training is required to understand how to do these installations, how the controls work, and how Title 24 requirements, how to use Title 24 requirements to be successful on a project. And again, this is a new industry. Title 24 has created basically a whole new industry with acceptance testing. We have a lot of new business models out there for acceptance testing companies. And I know a lot of electrical contractors, and one of our biggest acceptance testing company was a successful electrical contractor that moved from electrical contracting into Title 24. They're doing the acceptance testing, but they're doing the design, the plan review. They do a lot of consulting. So they've actually tripled their income from going from electrical into Title 24. But regardless, this generates money for everyone. So again, I was at my previous company, I was a senior project manager for the electrical division, working on projects from Los Angeles to Oregon throughout California. And within a year of doing acceptance testing, I was a division manager. I had multiple acceptance testers. I had 5 guys doing manufacturer lighting control startup. We were doing acceptance testing. We were in the big numbers within 1 year. So there's definitely a business model here for you, and it doesn't take that much to get into this. The acceptance testing technician course is a 3-day course. It involves a little bit of prerequisites and some testing, hands-on and written testing, but it's not like you have to go to school for a whole semester. This could be implemented or could be added to any type of curriculum. The acceptance test employer program is an 8-hour online training program. So this is like very small curriculums that could be inserted into an existing program. Additionally, we also have lighting controls classes. So we have various different lighting controls classes. We have our design, communications, installations, programming, and troubleshooting courses that all work around not only lighting controls, but also being Title 24 compliant. And they all work closely with these portable state-of-the-art manufacturer-sponsored lab boards that we use. These are portable lab boards that go along with our ATT course or go with our lighting controls classes. Using these lighting controls in our curriculum, this will give you a state-of-the-art program. This will help you stay current with what's going on in real-world industry. We are a lot of times the boots on the ground for a lot of other schools because they don't have the capacity to go out to the field and see what's going on. That's what we already do. And we've already partnered up with multiple manufacturers. So we have multiple manufacturers supporting us. We can bring that connection, our manufacturer connection, to your school. Let's say you want to do something or you want that manufacturer support. And let me tell you, the manufacturers want to support the schools in education because it just helps them. So I strongly recommend, looking for that partnership, not only with us, but also the manufacturers. Using these advanced lighting controls boards in your program, and these controls, again, are state of the art. They have all the lighting controls devices that you can see for Title 24. It has all the advanced, the basic, and even the programming of the lighting controls can be done on these boards. So lighting controls and Title 24 training has a place in all of these fields, all right? Colleges throughout California can incorporate our training and programs because we are online, or we can do streaming, or we even do in class. We have a lot of different options. So whether you stream, record, or live, or you know what, you want to have your own educators doing the training, we can do the train-the-trainers. We go out and we have train-the-trainers for our lighting controls classes and for our Title 24 classes. So you can have that offering if you want to offer it to your students. We already do it throughout California. This is not something we're inventing just for this particular program. We already do this. I already travel throughout California. We're actually going to be rolling out nationally too. So we're going to provide national training throughout the United States, because lighting controls are not just a California thing anymore. We're actually not on the forefront. We are, in the middle of the pack now. Other entities are actually going past us on energy codes. So we're going to stay up to date, and we're going to help to keep the nation up to date on not only energy codes, but also lighting controls classes. So our next steps is we would love to partner with you to help develop a best-in-class curriculum and give you the tools that your educators need to have their students be successful, to succeed, and to excel. There's all sorts of growth out there. There's opportunities for increased incomes, whether you're working for an employer and you're making yourself more viable, you're going into your own business model, or you're just getting a promotion because that you deserve it because you have all the tools that are needed for that company. Title 24, lighting controls, acceptance testing and certification, we have a lot. We have a lot to offer, and we can work with you if you want oversight, you want to see what's going on, how we can provide feedback to you. There's a lot of different opportunities for us to provide feedback to you on people that have gone through our program or utilized our education, like acceptance testing, because we do have oversight capabilities. So I would like to thank you for all of your time. I know it's a little lengthy. There's a lot of acronyms, a lot of information, and unfortunately, every presentation I do on Title 24, there's a lot of information. If you would like to contact us or have any questions, feel free to reach out to our office. This is Brianna's contact information. She's our program director. And if you feel that you need some other information, we have different experts within our company to assist you, including myself. Now, there were some questions at the end of our live session, and I would like to address them. So the question was, can a general electrician become an acceptance test technician? Yes, they can. If they do take the acceptance test technician course, they will get continuous education units to maintain that general electrician certification. We do have a lot of different opportunities for training too in lighting controls. Our program is basically the ATT program, which is where most of the questions were. It's a 3-day program. Again, we can do it. We have to do that program in person. It can be done by us, or we can do a trainer scenario, but that class has to be in person. It is a 16-hour course with a 2-hour written test and 6 hours of hands-on functional testing, watching them do the actual functional testing. The acceptance test employer is 100% done online. It's an 8-hour online course, which also has a 30-question test, which I think is about a 1-hour test. So again, I'd like to thank you for your time. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to our office.